Hello and welcome to The Takeaway with Chicago Town, our brand new live show on Balls.ie where we'll be giving our immediate reaction to every Ireland game in the Autumn Nations Cup. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by former Ulster and Ireland centre Darren Cave to chat about Ireland's very comfortable win over Wales in the aforementioned tournament. And of course, it wouldn't be The Takeaway with Chicago Town without some Chicago Town pizza. So myself and Darren fired up our respective ovens earlier on and had some great pizza during the game. We're going to try a different flavour every week. This week we've gone for the tomato stuffed crust takeaway pepperoni, which I think might be my personal favourite. Eating pizza and watching rugby, Darren, I can't think of many better ways to be spending a Friday night, and made all the better by that Ireland performance.
Yeah, normally I'd like to crack open a few pints as well, but I thought it'd be best not with coming on the show with you, Mick. So pizza was good, but unfortunately didn't get the chance to have a couple of beers with it.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, I suppose good pizza. But like good rugby as well at times, I would say. You know, I was like taking notes at the start of the game and I was ready to kind of talk about Ireland's new expansive philosophy. We saw a bit of it against Italy, but I didn't really know what to make of that game in the end. You know, it was a very comfortable win over Wales. We should be delighted. We should be walking on stars. But like, it just wasn't. Ireland left too much on the field while still winning by nearly 30 points.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. The first half, the speed at which Jameson Gibson Park was ripping the ball away when he was arriving at the breakdown, the ball was on a plate for him, and Ireland's attack looked really, really good. And then it just didn't kick on. I'm not sure why it was. And you're kind of left with that feeling of, were Ireland good or were Wales poor, or a bit of both? Because, I mean, it's a great, like scoring 30, what was the score again? 32-9 against Wales. Yeah, I mean, it's a great result, but it's hard to know what to make of it.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you take kind of one of the things you said there, and I think it was, again, whether it can go 80 minutes and whether it can be done at a kind of a higher intensity, maybe in a bigger game. But Conor Murray came on for the last few minutes and played as Ireland's third out half over the course of the game. But I wonder for the first 20 or 40 minutes, was he looking on going, I might have a real challenger here for the first time in a long time, because Gibson Park did speed up the game in a way that we haven't seen Murray do in a long time. Sometimes I wonder, you can tell me better than I know, how much of that is actually down to the scrum half or whether it's down to everything else that goes on in the phases that the team are going through. But it did seem like Ireland had that extra oomph that we really haven't seen in quite a while in the way they were recycling the ball.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of both. I mean, you can't, if you have a 9 who plays really high tempo, who's getting the rucks and getting the ball away and the ball's not ready to go, then it doesn't make a difference. So I have felt over the last while that sort of backup second scrum half role is really, really tight. You know, we all know how good Luke McGrath, Kieran Marmion is, and John Cooney, obviously. There's bit noises being made about Casey down in Munster, and Gibson Park, for me, definitely put a big foot forward tonight. Not only the tempo at which he played, some of his defence was really good. He got in the front line quite a lot, made a couple of really good tackles, notably a big one on John Davies, and his box kicking early on in the game. And what a way that was for Ireland to start the game, seeing him kick that ball up the line and James Lowe get straight after it. On the subject of players who are relatively new to international rugby, we all knew he was going to take to it like that. But I thought he was absolutely magnificent. I think Ireland really do need something. Ireland over the last few years have played a really, really structured game plan. There's been loads of talk about how they're moving away from that. And he's a guy who you just give him the ball and he beats people and he offloads. And I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be a big player for Ireland over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the game, by the way, wherever you're watching, on whatever device, on whatever channel. Please do get involved in the comments and I'll put your questions to Darren over the next 15 or 20 minutes or so. But on James Lowe, Darren, like, it was that sort of that Ireland player coming off his wing and just popping up all over the place with that sort of mad energy that he seems to have, but real intelligent play as well. I mean, he hit one kick in behind at one stage there that just, like, you know, he just sort of seems to think on his feet a lot. He just is a unique kind of player, and one that, you know, as you say, we haven't maybe had that kind of player before, but it might not have fit in perfectly under the structured Joe Schmidt era, but he could be the perfect player for what we need now if we're going to kind of evolve under Andy Farrell.
Yeah, and I love the way he offloads the ball. You think of that break he made in the first half off the inside ball. He's got the ball in one hand.
Yeah.
He offloads it to Sexton, and then when Sexton gets tackled, he flies and cleans out the ruck. Like a back shouldn't be cleaning out rucks. And again, I just think it's good in rugby to have guys like that. We've had Keith Earls over the years who's been a bit like that with less physicality. Stockdale has sort of been in a similar mold. You just give him the ball and let him beat people. And but again, he probably hasn't been at that level of form recently. And hearing during commentary some of Lowe's try scoring records since he's been playing for Leinster, I think it's 30 something in 49 games, something like that. Along with just being part of that Leinster group, just winning matches and winning and winning and winning. So again, he's a guy who I think is going to play for Ireland a lot in the next few years. I thought both the centres played really well. It's sort of probably one of Ireland's, well, the competition all over the park, which is great, but the centres in particular. I mean, Chris Farrell, I always felt like Chris Farrell was a guy that Joe Schmidt didn't really want to pick. I always felt like he wanted to pick Henshaw, Ringrose, and Aki. They were his three guys, but every time he gave Farrell a chance, he took it. And he took it. Conway was almost in a similar mold, almost like they don't want to pick him, but every time he plays, he can't sort of be dropped. And I thought Chris Farrell, he had a good game as well. So loads of positives.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I think I read during the week that Henshaw and Farrell played together at under 18s level, and they've been waiting 10 years. They've never been picked for Ireland together since, despite all the kind of different centre partnerships we've had over the last few years. Look, it's a position that you know very well. I would see that as kind of like the two big men. The combo, obviously Bundy Aki kind of bring in as well, but Farrell, like, he seemed to just make the gain line every single time, and what that sets up for the players around him, it just seems to give Ireland go forward ball a lot. But what else was he doing, kind of other than what the obvious thing that I'd see on the TV? What else was he providing for the team there?
We probably didn't get to see the best of it tonight, but I think he's a very underrated sort of ball player. I think like he can really help get the ball to the edge. We've seen him playing for Ireland, actually real nice, not offloading, like he can offload post contact, but it's pre-contact as well. So I like that about him. I feel like, with him, he's kind of, I wouldn't associate him with having a really strong kicking game, but other than that, he's kind of got it all. When you got players that are big, are unselfish, they run good decoy lines, they can get the ball to the edge. It sort of provides a real good recipe for, defenders. You don't want to drift off him because he's the guts of 17 stone. He's very, very athletic. If you give him a soft shoulder, he's gonna bust through there. But at the same time, you can't sit down him completely because he can release the ball. So again, like, they've got loads of choice in the middle there. I think some of Bundy Aki's form since restart's been very impressive, and I'm a huge Guy Ringrose fan as well. So there's plenty to pick from there.
Yeah, it's mad when you think that when we came back against Italy before Ringrose got injured, it was Aki and Ringrose that were picked, and Henshaw and Farrell were kind of on the outside, and now you'd be looking to the England performance thinking who will actually get picked. But actually, before we at half-time, Darren, we got you to send your prediction that Ireland would actually win the game. I think you went for 33-13. Yeah, you weren't too far off in the end. Actually, 32-9 wasn't too bad. And I don't know if you were just trying to make me jealous by getting that lovely pizza in the shop. But look, weren't too far off in your prediction. But I think the reason I bring that up was the second half performance, which seemed so kind of flat. Ireland actually, won 16-3 in the second half, 16-6 in the first half. But one of the reasons I think that I wasn't as confident as you was Johnny Sexton went off so early, looked to be playing very well, looked to tweak his hamstring, looked devastated coming off. He knows he doesn't have, too many more days out left, in his career. He can't be affording to pick up hamstring injuries. But it made, it gave us an interesting look at Billy Burns coming on for his debut. For longer than we would have expected, I suppose. And unfortunately, he didn't finish the game out. He got HIA and had to go off. But I thought he looked quite assured. And, that number whatever it is, 21 role, 22 role is very available on this Ireland team. We've seen a bit of Ross Byrne, we've seen Jack Carty. Joey Carberry doesn't seem to be able to stay fit. He actually did play well enough today to sort of lay down somewhat of a marker there, or at least get another go over providing the HIA is okay over the next coming weeks.
And that was one of the biggest upsides of the games, that we got an opportunity to. It would have been great if he was able to finish the game. Hopefully he's not too badly hurt. But for him to get, I think it was probably about 40 or 50, we were hoping it was going to be an hour when he got on. I thought it was nice to see James Ryan captain Ireland. James Ryan is sort of an Ireland and potentially a British and Irish Lions captain in the making. So these were the opportunities that they were really good to see, and that you don't always get in a test match versus Wales. In terms of Burns, I don't think he's that dissimilar a player to Sexton. He's not. I don't think he's as physical. Johnny is a bit more. We all know what he's like. He likes to get stuck in. Billy doesn't. Billy's not as angry. But in terms of, they both probably have a better show go and break than you would expect, given they're not sort of super quick athletes. We saw Sexton with a lovely show go and a handoff to the chin when he got through. And Burns is a bit like that as well. And organisationally, very, very good. His ability to sort of steer a team around the pitch. So he has a lot of the attributes that Johnny has. And it's a position, again, that is wide open. A couple of years ago, you'd assumed it was Joey Carberry's slot. When I think of Joey Carberry, I always think of that Munster game at Kingsholm when he and I think Andrew Conway was another one, were exceptional. Carty's played some great rugby. Ross Byrne has played a lot of good rugby as well. He has the advantage of playing every week for the best team. Sometimes I wonder, would even I look good playing 10 for Leinster, Mick? But that was what was good about those games. Seeing the likes of James Ryan get the captain, seeing Billy Burns play more than maybe he normally would, albeit through an injury. I thought Will Connors off the bench. I said about centres being competitive, like the back row is a joke. Will Connors just made such an impact. And I suppose even the second row, Quinn Roux in, and you're in big trouble when Tag Byrne is your last choice to slip on the bench. So just so much depth.
And Quinn Roux's scrummaging in particular seemed to really help, like Andrew Porter. I think we talked a lot about, we mentioned, Hugo Keenan stepping in at short notice into full back when Stockdale was ruled out. That was a positive. I think the scrum was a real positive. The line out looked a little bit better than it had been. A lot of those things really, really good. We've talked about a lot, and we didn't talk about like Peter O'Mahony's performance coming in and playing alongside Doris instead of being replaced by him. Where does CJ Stander go from here? Where does O'Mahony go? Where does Doris go? All in really, really good form. So loads of positives. But I suppose despite a 32-9 win over Wales, as you alluded to at the start, not all positive either, So one of the things that I would say was that, Ireland seemed to, and it was the same against France, have a lot of trips into the 22 that come to nothing or maybe come to 3 points. And they just, we got to try in the last minute. We got to try in the first half. But that was a game which Ireland dominated, and we probably should be scoring more than 2 tries.
Yeah, and that's kind of probably why we've got this feeling of how did we do? Because I think we've been spoilt with Irish rugby, provincial and international, for a long time. But you just think that really good Ireland teams over the past 5-10 years, like we only scored twice, didn't we? As you say, one of them in the last minute, which was really poor defence off a set-piece scrum. So I just feel like an Ireland team, a really strong Ireland team, might have scored 3, 4, 5 tries against the Welsh team like that, So while I'm not being negative and it's a great result, I don't know. It just feels like it was an okay performance. Yeah. Maybe I'm being a little unfair because I thought the second half was at times probably be a bit unfair to call it boring, but I wouldn't say it was edge of the seat stuff.
No, absolutely not, especially with Ireland kind of seemingly so in control. But what about Wales then? They're in just a weird position. I think that's 6 defeats in a row. That's unheard of for the Wales of the the 21st century anyway. Maybe in the 90s when we were growing up, that was what we were used to seeing from Wales. But Gatland is gone after a long time. But although maybe the team is getting a little bit too old, maybe it's getting a little bit too stale, but it doesn't seem to be clicking with the new coach. And I thought maybe, they play that Scotland game, maybe they reboot, start again. The team they named suggests that they might be taking this tournament a little bit more seriously than everybody else, just to get some momentum back heading into next year. But they never showed up at all, and it just seems like this is a washed team.
Yeah, and that probably one of the biggest positives for Ireland is that they comfortably beat a Welsh team who, albeit aren't playing well and didn't play well, but they're absolutely scrapping for their lives. My concern was that Ireland didn't really have anything on the line, whereas Wales are fighting for, there's coaches threatening, potentially losing jobs, there's players, there's a lot going on in Wales. It's hard to know. I think the job Pivac did at the Scarlets, he was fantastic with them. I'm not necessarily saying he's the problem, but I don't think just because you have a successful provincial or club coaching career means that you're definitely going to be a good international coach. It's a complete different job. If you look at how you build a squad at international rugby, you pick from the players from your country. At club level, you can sign whoever within your budget. You don't get access to your players anything like in a similar way to you do at club level. So it's very, very different, and I think the jury is still out on Pivac. From a player's point of view, I think if you look at the front five, it probably doesn't fill you with... You look at those Welsh teams over the past, again, they've been spoilt as well the past 10 or 15 years, but I'm looking at like Rhys Carey, Ryan Elias, Thomas Francis, I know, has been going well at Exeter, and that was his 50th cap. I think Will Rowlands, that was about his third cap. So outside of Alan Wynne-Jones, I think they're really missing Ken Owens. But if you look at the back line, you're kind of going, well, Halfpenny, Williams, Davies, Adams, Bigger, Gareth Davies, obviously Owen Watkins a bit new to it, but there's a really good core group of players there. So it's very, very hard to put your finger on what's going wrong with them.
12 months after being very, very close to reaching a World Cup final. It's just, it is a strange one. And I suppose it leads into where Ireland go from here, because it's England at Twickenham next week, which is always a great one, Saturday afternoon. I think as a nation almost we'll be more up for that naturally. My question about England, I suppose, is whether Ireland have an advantage in a weird way, in that Ireland have now played Italy, France, big game in France, didn't go well, week off, and then you get Wales, which is still, it might not be the Wales of old, but it's still Wales, and there's still that rivalry there. Whereas England had their warm-up game against the Barbarians called off. That wouldn't have meant anything anyway. And then they play Italy, which is, it's not top test level. Then they have the week off, and now they play Georgia. So Ireland are coming into this almost borderline full steam, ready to go. England, we don't know what their form line is. They weren't great against Italy, let's face it. Do you see any kind of opening there? Am I absolutely clutching at straws because of what they did to us in the spring?
I'm not sure how it's going to go. I'm really looking forward to it, mainly just because I think it's really hard to tell where this Ireland team is exactly at. I feel like even if you go back to the World Cup, we lost to Japan. Scotland were poor. The All Blacks were better than us. Then in the Six Nations, Wales were poor. Scotland, were okay. Italy are poor. We've beaten another poor Wales team again. And then we lost quite badly to France and England. So there is a small part of me which is going, is Irish rugby, is the national team slightly behind where we perceive it to be? Because anytime we've come up against a top 5 nation within the last year, albeit 2 of them away from home and 1 at the World Cup, we've been comfortably beaten. Yeah.
So where does that leave us then over the next 3 weeks? So we're going to be watching these games. We're going to talk to you after them. We're going to get excited about the results, but we'll always have our eye on the bigger picture, I suppose. So even though it is Twickenham next week, and we've obviously got Georgia, and then we'll see who we play in the last round with the way it works in the Nations Cup. this tournament of itself isn't, it's not a traditional tournament. It's not really going to survive past, this COVID crisis. So it's a kind of a shot to nothing in a way. It sets up the Six Nations. What do we want to see? We want to see a night like tonight where there's no point in just playing all young lads either, because then they're not mixing with the top players, the likes of James Ryan, the likes of Sexton. So we just want to see constant evolution of the team, maybe 5-6 changes every week, and just come out of it with a much better view of what our starting 15 is.
Yeah, he's got to find a balance between. There's no point in putting out a group of kids that go and ship 40 points. But I do think that this is a good opportunity, this tournament, because most people don't view it as a tournament, is an opportunity to see players and play players. And the last few years in Ireland, last 10 years in Ireland, we've had great success in Six Nations, but we haven't achieved what we've wanted to in World Cups. So what we want to see now is the players that are going to be a big part of that World Cup. Let's find out who they are. That's the sort of upside of the problem he's got, which is a good problem. I think it's been a long time since there's been just so many players at a reasonably level playing field. I think outside of I think if both props are fit, James Ryan and the halfbacks, outside of those 5, I think the other 10 are kind of, if you asked 10 people, they would probably pick different players. So they need to see players get an opportunity and then start figuring out which way the pecking order is.
Absolutely. Before we go, Darren, just a quick mention of your Movember game is incredibly strong, I have to say. Will we be keeping that up for the whole tournament? And will you go full on Australian cricketer by the end of it, or are you going to keep it trimmed?
It went. It started in March, so it's the earliest November there's been in a while. It was kind of like just I'm bored, let's grow a mustache in lockdown, and here we are. We're still in lockdown, but it still feels like March here as well. So I don't really know what's going on.
Okay, well, look, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if we can see what sort of challenge we can set you to maybe leave the trimming for the length of the autumn. You say the Autumn Nations Cup isn't a real tournament. Let's see how bushy that moustache can get by week 4, and we'll see. Maybe that's the real tournament.
Do my best.
Okay, well, that's it from us this week on The Takeaway with Chicago Town. Thanks a million to Darren. We'll be back next Saturday evening for live reaction to the big one, Ireland versus England at Twickenham. Join us then and pick yourself up a Chicago Town pizza for the match. They have boatloads of squishy signature sauce and cheese, and even more cheese. A great addition to watching the match at home. We'll talk to you then.